For every genius in the world, there are millions of average Joes. We cannot choose if we are born rich or with innate talent. Not everyone can be Albert Einstein, and not every horse can be Symboli Rudolph. The difference between the super elite and us bottom dwellers might seem infinitely large, but with hard work, we can close the gap. In the world of Japanese horse racing, no other horse embodies this idea more than Mihono Bourbon. In early spring of 1988, Keiji Haraguchi, the owner of a small family-run ranch, aspired to find a stallion to mate with his mare, Katsumi Echo. She was sired by Chalet, a French horse with 4 wins out of 12 races at the local level. Similar to her father, Katsumi Echo had an unsuccessful career in the local Kanto region and returned to Haraguchi Ranch afterwards to begin her breeding career. Haraguchi had his eyes set on Mill George, son of the legendary Mill Reef, with 12 wins out of 14 starts. Additionally, Mill George was the sire for Inari 1 and eventually became the broodmare sire for Seiyun Sky. When Haraguchi went to make the request, he was hit with a harsh reality. He could not afford the seeding fee. After Inari 1's 8-win streak the year prior, Mill George's prices skyrocketed. He was so expensive, Haraguchi could not even afford to be on the waiting list. At most, Haraguchi could only afford to spend 1 million yen. Luckily, there was an alternative. Mill Reef had another son by the name of Magnitude, who was extremely cheap because of his miserable performance as a racer. Haraguchi hired Magnitude to breed with Katsumi Echo for just 500,000 yen, which could be paid over a 2-year period. 1 year later, Katsumi Echo birthed Mihono Bourbon on April 25, 1989. Many people were surprised how big baby Bourbon was at birth, especially for being Katsumi Echo's first foal. It's said that his waist was so big, he got stuck when coming out. As a foal, Bourbon was often by himself and rarely interacted with the other older horses besides his mother. Additionally, Bourbon was incredibly docile, which was a trait he carried throughout his entire life. About a year later, the Mihono International Company purchased Bourbon for 7.5 million yen and gave him the name we all know now. His name is a combination of the Mihono title and the Bourbon dynasty from 16th century France. After their purchase, the Mihono Company notified trainer Tameyo Toyama that his new trainee would arrive in April of 1991. Toyama immediately instructed Haraguchi to switch Bourbon's feed to alfalfa and add calcium supplements to prepare the horse for his rigorous training program. Alfalfa has almost double the crude protein content than most grass hays, as well as being higher in calories. It is the ideal feed for performance horses, and Toyama wanted his new trainee to get as much protein as he can get.
So we're going to add some protein, take some ice cubes, dip them in protein, throw them in the mix, then add some protein, and then, and only then, can you add some protein and blend.
When Mihono Bourbon entered the Toyama stable, Tsukasa Yasunaga, Bourbon's stable attendant and assistant trainer, took pity on him because of Toyama's ruthless reputation. Training started immediately with one run of the Rito Training Center's sloped course. Bourbon easily cleared it with Yasunaga on the saddle. Over the next several months, Toyama steadily increased the number of runs per day and eventually had Bourbon running the track 4 times a day. Horses from other stables ran the slope course twice, maybe 3 times a day, and only several times a week. But Mihono Bourbon was running it 4 times every single day. He sprinted up the 26-degree incline, walked back down, and sprinted back up. Rinse and repeat. Toyama's intense slope training was known as Spartan training.
Spartans! What is your profession?
In the game, all the backlash directed at us about Mihono Bourbon's training program is a representation of the criticism Toyama received for his training style. Without a doubt, Spartan training produces results, but often at the cost of the horse. Many horses have broken down because of it. Toyama justified Spartan training by saying, "A racehorse cannot survive if it does not win, so I have to train it to win, even if I must be a demon. If I was given a genius fast horse, then I would not have to do this training. but he's not a genius, and he must train hard. While we're on the topic of Tomeo Toyama, Mihono Bourbon's father in the game is a depiction of Toyama. Bourbon states that her father was a trainer and that she trained with him from sunrise to sunset, which is exactly what happened in real life. Fun fact, Toyama and Sakai Watanabe, Fujikiseki and Jungle Pocket's trainer, were the first pioneers who embraced the slope track after its construction in 1985. That actually gives a lot of color as to what may have caused Fujikiseki to break down so early in his career. Yasunaga believed the main reason Bourbon was able to tirelessly perform each run was because of all the food he ate. He was known as a heavy eater whose appetite rivaled Oguri Cap. It's said that at one point, Bourbon ate as much as 60 kilograms in a day. Considering how much Toyama trained him, his large appetite was only natural. Additionally, Yasunaga described Bourbon as a horse who was unfazed regardless of the situation. Whether he was in a completely new environment or under harsh conditions, Bourbon was always calm. Interestingly, the only time Bourbon showed any signs of a temper was if someone interrupted his meals or when he was being challenged in a race. A month before Mihono Bourbon's debut, during their usual slope training, Bourbon surprised everyone with an amazing run. He cleared the final 500 meters of the slope in 29.9 seconds on his second run, which is unheard of for a 2-year-old horse. Most of the older, more developed horses could not breach the 30-second threshold. Many of the staff thought it was just a fluke, but Bourbon clocked his 4th run that day with the same exact time. After that, Mihono Bourbon was referred to as Prodigy of the Slope. Once fans and critics caught wind of his new title and the reason behind it, they unanimously voted him as the most likely to win his debut race. As a matter of fact, Bourbon was rated as the most likely to win in every race of his career, except for one. His debut took place on September 7th, 1991, at the 1,000-meter Chukyo racecourse with Sadahiro Kojima on the saddle. Kojima was the sole jockey for Bourbon's entire career, as well as a close student of Toyama. At the start of the race, Bourbon left the gate incredibly late and was forced to run in the very back of the pack due to all the competitors blocking his path. Only after reaching the final corner did he find an opening to the front. After weaving through the traffic like a nimble navigator, Bourbon was in 5th at the start of the home stretch. In the final 200 meters, Bourbon passed every horse, finished a full length ahead of second place, and set a new course record of 58.1 seconds. News of the Slope Prodigy's debut spread, and everyone automatically assumed Bourbon was a sprinter type, despite being descended from Mill Reef, who was stupidly strong in medium distances. Even Toyama considered his trainee as a sprinter, but to be fair, Toyama thought every horse was a sprinter. All thoroughbreds are sprinters up to a certain distance. However, Toyama also firmly believed lack of stamina can be overcome with training, which is one of the reasons why he trained Bourbon so extensively. Sadly, Bourbon's powerful debut performance left him with inflammation around the cannon bone. He did not return to the track until 2 months later on November 23rd. At the start of the 1,600-meter race, Bourbon rushed to the front and ran half a length behind the lead horse. He stayed on the lead's tail up until they approached the final corner. Quick side note, Mihono Bourbon is very competitive and gets extremely excited anytime another horse contests him for the lead position. Keep that in the back of your mind for now. Shortly after entering the corner, Bourbon and another horse lined up with the lead, and all three left the turn at the same time. After hitting the home stretch, Mihono Bourbon plowed ahead and left everyone in his dust. Bourbon was already in first with 400 meters remaining. He continued accelerating down the straight and crossed the goal with a 6-length difference. Mihono Bourbon finished the race in 1 minute and 35.1 seconds, which is referenced at the start of Bourbon's career in the game. Just 2 weeks later, Mihono Bourbon entered the G1 Asahi High. Just like in the previous race, Bourbon ran to the front but could not take the lead. Kojima did not allow him to. Bourbon ran steadily behind the first position horse all the way through the final corner. Once he hit the final straight, Bourbon accelerated, but so did everyone else. Although he managed to overtake the horse he was chasing, another competitor lined up with him on the left. Bourbon and his new challenger struggled for first all the way to the goalpost. Mihono Bourbon barely won by less than a head's length. Even though they won, Toyama was furious with Kojima. He blamed Kojima for the tightness of the race. Toyama demanded, "From now on, you let that horse run. Take the lead and don't hold back. This should have been an easy race." Mihono Bourbon's victory at the Asahi High was a significant event for many. It was Kojima and Toyama's first G1 win since the integration of the grading system. But more importantly, it saved Mihono Bourbon's mother's life. After birthing Mihono Bourbon, Katsumi Eko could not conceive again. A mare that cannot produce offspring for a horse production ranch is essentially useless. She was bleeding money from the already struggling ranch, and no one wanted to buy her. Keiji Haraguchi decided the best financial choice was to euthanize her. Thankfully, his wife, Reiko, took pity on the horse and pleaded with Keiji to wait a year. Just as the year was about to be over, Mihono Bourbon won the G1 Asahi High. All plans for her disposal were cancelled, and she remained at the ranch to produce 6 more foals over the course of her remaining life. On another note, Keiji Haraguchi was present to witness Bourbon's victory at the Asahi High. It was the first time he had seen Bourbon in a year and a half. He could barely recognize the horse because of how massively different Bourbon's body had changed. By this point in time, Mihono Bourbon was so muscular that some people said it looked like he has an extra set of butt muscles.
Oh my God, Becky, look at her butt.
At the end of the year, Mihono Bourbon received the Best 2-Year-Old Stallion Award, which was no surprise to anyone considering he was undefeated with a G1 win. In the new year, while most horses were resting during winter break, Mihono Bourbon was back on the slope track. No rest for the wicked, huh? In this case, Toyama was the wicked one because Bourbon sprained his left hip during slope training on January 8th. They had to cancel their entry in the Shinzan Kinen and registered for the spring stakes instead. Many of the stable staff and racing critics did not think Mihono Bourbon could handle the extra 200 meters for the upcoming race. Toyama did not share their sentiment. He relentlessly trained Bourbon throughout all of March. "Horse racing is a sport. If you lack something, then you need to train it. The quality and quantity of training matters." On March 29, 1992, Mihono Bourbon entered the spring stakes as the second favorite horse. Clearly, there was still some doubt about Bourbon's ability to handle longer distances. That's okay though. He just has to prove them wrong. Bourbon dashed out of the gates and immediately claimed the front position with Sakura Bakshino on his tail. Both of them remained in the front throughout the middle leg, with a 1-length gap between each other. But Bakshino stalled at the final corner and fell behind. Bourbon went into overdrive as soon as he hit the home stretch, and the race was basically over from that point on. Bourbon increased his lead with every gallop down the final straight and finished the race with a massive 7-length difference. A sports writer described Mihono Bourbon's final sport as the chestnut-colored bullet train. Bourbon's overwhelming victory completely erased everyone's doubts about his distance aptitude. In fact, his performance at the Spring Stakes led everyone to believe his victory for the Satsuki Show was guaranteed. 3 weeks later, Mihono Bourbon burst out of the gates in the first round of the Classic Triple Crown and seized the front position in a matter of seconds. Interestingly, Kojima stated Bourbon ran to the front of his own accord. He had nothing to do with it. Bourbon was in the lead during every stage of the race. The closest anyone ever got to him was 1 length away, and that only lasted for a few seconds. Mihono Bourbon pulled away the moment he felt the presence of another horse approaching from behind. Even on the final corner, where most horses clump up, Bourbon stayed ahead by 1 length. His lead only widened on the home stretch. Mihono Bourbon continued speeding down the straight and crossed the finish line with a 2.5 length difference. Tears filled Kojima's eyes. After 22 years as a jockey, Kojima achieved his first classic victory at the age of 40. In preparation for the Japanese Derby at the end of May, Toyama increased Mihono Bourbon's slope training to 5 runs a day, but it proved to be too much for him. His right front leg slightly swelled up on May 15th, but the Derby was fast approaching. There was no time to rest. Toyama switched to pool training for the next several days so he could continue improving Bourbon's stamina without straining the legs. 4 days later, Bourbon was back on the slope course doing the usual 4 runs a day. He showed no signs of pain and performed every task like normal, as if nothing had happened. On the last day of May, Mihono Bourbon entered the Derby's starting gate at the outside position. Bourbon leapt out of the gate and ran towards the inside as soon as possible. Just like in the Satsuki show, Bourbon maintained a fast, steady pace throughout the race and never let any competitor run by his side. He stayed at the head of the pack, entering and leaving the final corner. Once he reached the straight, Mihono Bourbon just took off. Despite their best efforts, the other horses could not keep up with him. The distance between Bourbon and his opponents continued increasing. By the time he crossed the finish line, Mihono Bourbon was ahead of the next horse by 4 lengths. Horse racing analysts noticed Bourbon's lap times during the Derby were magnificently precise. His times were so close together, they described it as machine-like. Henceforth, everyone referred to Mihono Bourbon as the Cyborg. After his victory at the Japanese Derby, Mihono Bourbon was sent to Yoshida Ranch in Hokkaido to rest for summer vacation. For the first time since leaving Hadaguchi Ranch, Bourbon was allowed to relax and graze in the company of other horses. A well-deserved break for the 5th undefeated Double Crown winner in Japanese history. However, after 3 months, summer break was over and it was time to return to Spartan School in September. For the next month and a half, Bourbon was back on the slope track doing 4 runs a day, as usual. His next race took place on October 18th at the G2 Kyoto Shimbun High to compete for the right to run in the last round of the Classic Triple Crown. Despite being the farthest from the inner rail, Mihono Bourbon sprinted out of the gates, claimed the lead position, and moved to the inside. After passing the first corner, Mihono Bourbon maintained a comfortable 2-length lead in front of the other competitors, including Kyoei Bogen, another front-running horse. As every racer approached the final corner, Reischauer closed in on Bourbon and chased after him, but could not get closer than 1 length. Bourbon tried to escape on the home stretch and briefly broke away, but Reischauer immediately regained the lost ground. However, Bourbon finished the race before Rice had any hope of overtaking him. The race ended with Mihono Bourbon in first by 1.5 lengths. He set another new course record of 2 minutes and 12 seconds. Only 3 weeks remained until the Kikuka. As you'd expect, Toyama continued to train Mihono Bourbon as much as possible. 4 days before the Kikuka, Bourbon beat the slope course record by 0.2 seconds and clocked a new time at 24.9 seconds during his second run. Like a well-oiled machine, he ran the same time on his 4th try as well. Afterwards, Bourbon spent the next 2 days training in the pool and then rested on the 7th of November. On another note, a few days before the start of the Kikuka, Bourbon's jockey, Kojima, was resting at his house when he suddenly received a visitor. It was Mikio Matsunaga, Kyoei Bogen's jockey. Matsunaga boldly declared, "I'm going to break away and take the lead." And then he left. As you can imagine, Kojima was confused about what just transpired. Why did his opponent suddenly blurt out their strategy? Was it a challenge or a warning? In hindsight, it was a warning. At a press conference right before the Kikuka, Toyama was asked, "What does it mean to be a sprinter in a 3,000-meter race?"
"It's pitiful, isn't it? The horse does not want to run. He is doing so because people in the industry force him to. There is only one opportunity for the classics, so we cannot miss this chance. What does it mean for a sprinter to run in the Kikuka? I can only think of one thing. Humans are greedy.
Afterwards, Toyama approached Kojima and instructed him,
Run away and take the lead. Kyoei Bogen is no match for Bourbon. Trust in the strength of our horse.
However, doubt clouded Kojima's mind. He has always been anxious about the increasing distance thrusted upon Mihono Bourbon ever since the Asahi High. Kojima has faithfully followed Toyama's instructions up until now, but his racing instincts and Matsunaga's declaration were screaming at him in this moment. This is not a race we can win with speed. If we engage in a direct battle with Kyoei Bogen, it will be a miserable defeat. On November 8th, 1992, at 3:35 p.m., the Kikisho starting gates opened. Mihono Bourbon instantly claimed the lead, but just like Matsunaga announced, Kyoei Bogen sprinted up with all his might and passed Bourbon in a matter of seconds. Not only did he pass Bourbon, but he was in front by over 3 lengths. Mihono Bourbon's competitive side kicked in immediately, and he ferociously pursued Bogen. Kojima desperately tried to suppress his horse's desire to run, but his efforts were in vain. None of his commands reached his horse. At this point, he was just along for the ride. Even before reaching the first corner, Mihono Bourbon was back on Bogen's tail. Once they cleared the corner, Bogen sped up and another gap formed between the two. Bourbon refused to let him escape and continued chasing after him. The pace of these two rampaging runaways was so fast that they cleared the first 1,000 meters in 59.7 seconds, which was exactly 3 seconds faster than the year before. Kyoei Bogen finally started slowing down at the 1,000 meter remaining mark, which allowed the other runners to slowly catch up. At 600 meters remaining, Bourbon caught up and passed Bogen as they entered the final corner. Mihono Bourbon was in the lead by 1 length when he entered the home stretch, but 2 horses were quickly gaining on him. At 200 meters remaining, Rice Shower and Machikane Tanhoiza ran by his side. In the last 15 meters, Rice Shower passed Mihono Bourbon and won the Kikisho. Bourbon barely managed to get second place by half a length. When the camera zooms in, you can clearly see the disappointment of the spectators. Although Rice Shower is booed and shunned for his victory at the Kikisho, the most hated horse on the receiving end of the fans' criticism was Kyoei Bogen. Stupid horse, he didn't let Bourbon run away. He interfered even though he had no chance of winning. I can't believe that stupid horse ruined Bourbon's Triple Crown. What the media and fans did not know at the time was Kyoei Bogen and his jockey, Matsunaga, had no choice. Bogen's trainer instructed Matsunaga to interfere and prevent Mihono Bourbon from winning the Triple Crown. Even though Kyoei Bogen primarily ran in mile and some medium races, his team willingly sacrificed their horse in the 3,000 meter Kikisho. Matsunaga was only in his 6th year as a jockey, so he did not dare disobey the trainer. As an act of good faith, Matsunaga deliberately revealed their running strategy to Kojima and prayed Mihono Bourbon would not give chase if they were too far ahead. Well, we know how that turned out. Obviously, everyone on Bourbon's team was seriously saddened. Even trainer Toyama admitted dueling with Kyoei Bogen was a massive mistake. But no matter. There will be more races to conquer. Or so they thought. After the race, veterinarians confirmed lameness in Mihono Bourbon's right hind leg. Their plans to compete in the Japan Cup and Arimakinen were cancelled. Bourbon rested for the remainder of the year at Toyama Stable. It should be no surprise to anyone that Mihono Bourbon was recognized as the best 3-year-old stallion and received the JRA's Horse of the Year award for being the Double Crown winner of 1992. Bourbon's team started prepping his racing schedule for the new year, but nothing could have prepared them for the coming storm. On January 27th, Bourbon's right hind leg, the same lame leg from 2 months ago, developed inflammation around the tibia bone. Clearly, there would be no racing for the foreseeable future. Mihono Bourbon was sent to Yoshida Ranch to comfortably graze in recovery. But during his time at the ranch, Bourbon inexplicably broke his metatarsal bone on the same freaking leg in early April. As if things were not bad enough, trainer Tameo Toyama passed away on May 29, 1993, at the age of 61 due to cancer. Toyama has been fighting esophageal cancer for several years, but after the Kikuka, it spread to his liver and he was hospitalized. While in the hospital, Toyama wrote his autobiography, Training to Make the Strongest Horse, Why Mihono Bourbon Became a Famous Horse, which was published 1 month after his passing. In 1994, he received the JRA Award for Equestrian Culture in recognition of his contributions to the horse racing industry. Toyama's wife and 2 of his students accepted the award on his behalf. In honor of his teacher, Kojima proclaimed, "I was not a top performer, but he trained me nonetheless. He was a strict master, and at the same time, he treated me with more love than a real father. When it comes to horses, nothing is more important for my master." If you ever wondered why Mihono Bourbon in the anime and game always refers to the trainer as master, it is because of the master-student relationship between Toyama and Kojima. After Toyama's passing, Mihono Bourbon was forced to bounce around between stables because Toyama's successor, Hideyuki Mori, refused to take him in. Luckily, Shigeki Matsumoto, another Toyama student, eventually accepted Bourbon into his stable. Bourbon stayed with Matsumoto only for a month before he was transferred to the JRA's Racehorse Rehabilitation Center in October. It's unclear what type of treatment he received, but the facility is well known for their horse hot springs, so I like to think that Mihono Bourbon spent his time bathing in them. Bourbon eventually made a full recovery, but he never returned to racing in 1993. In January of 94, everyone agreed it would be best to retire Mihono Bourbon. A retirement ceremony was held on February 6 at the Tokyo racecourse with Bourbon wearing number 15, the same number he wore when he won the Japanese Derby. His final record stands at 7 consecutive wins and 1 second-place finish at the Kikuka. After retirement, Mihono Bourbon entered the Monbetsu stud farm to begin breeding, but his stud career was unsuccessful. Despite his incredible racing record, Mihono Bourbon's parents were looked down upon. Everyone attributed Bourbon's success to the intense Spartan-style training. It was not talent, but hard work that enabled him to become a legendary horse. This fact became even more evident when none of his offspring could achieve anything higher than a win at the local level. After 18 years as a breeding stallion, Mihono Bourbon only sired 265 foals, and there were only 40 wins among them. He retired from stud duty in 2012 and was moved to Smile Farm to spend the rest of his life in relaxation. Sadly, in the same year Mihono Bourbon moved to Smile Farm, Sadahiro Kojima passed away. Kojima raced for a few more years after riding Mihono Bourbon, but he ultimately retired and became a trainer in 2001 to follow in his master's footsteps. However, over the next decade, Kojima struggled with his stable to the extent that he could barely pay his employees' salaries. On top of that, Kojima shouldered his family's large debt. Eventually, the burden became too much to bear, and Kojima ultimately took his own life on January 23, 2012, at the age of 60. Both Toyama and Kojima are well remembered for their efforts in raising Mihono Bourbon to be one of the strongest horses of the early 1990s. Meanwhile, at Smile Farm, Bourbon was fully enjoying his time in retirement. He no longer had the obligation of constantly training or the need to perform. Funnily, Mihono Bourbon became a super lazy horse. It's said that while other horses ran across the fields and up the hills, Bourbon never exercised and spent most of his time eating grass and occasionally rolling around. Can you really blame him though? He probably never wants to step foot on another hill again after all those runs on the sloped track. Although he acted like a potato, his body was still incredibly muscular. Mihono Bourbon's remaining time at Smile Farm was mostly uneventful and peaceful. He was tenderly cared for and often received visitors from fans. For a retired horse, it doesn't get much better than that. Unfortunately, everyone eventually succumbs to the test of time. On the morning of February 21st, 2021, Mihono Bourbon became bedridden. He painlessly passed away at 6 p.m. the next day at the age of 28. No major complications were found, and it's believed he died to natural causes from old age. Mihono Bourbon is regarded as a legendary horse that broke the boundaries of one's limitations. He was born from horses everyone considered as losers, and in spite of outsiders' opinions, Mihono Bourbon carved his name in the world of horse racing. In the year 2000, he was ranked 17 as the JRA's 100 famous horses of the 20th century. Additionally, many people regarded him as the strongest runaway horse in history. Mihono Bourbon's efforts popularized the slope track so much that the training centers in other regions, such as Kanto, installed their own slope courses, and many trainers incorporate slope training into their programs. However, no other horse has been able to withstand Spartan training like Bourbon did. It's even more amazing when you consider Mihono Bourbon persisted through each grueling training session without making a fuss. He always maintained a calm, gentle demeanor. His easygoing personality was so pleasing that the JRA featured Mihono Bourbon in a commercial back in 1996. When actress Mayu Suruta, who he has never met before, straddled his back, Bourbon barely reacted. Mihono Bourbon's legacy is definitive proof you do not need talent to be exceptional. With hard work, we can exceed our limitations. Don't let someone tell you what you can or cannot do. Shatter their expectations. Strengthen your body and mind. Overwhelm all who dare doubt your greatness. Embrace the Spartan spirit. Embrace the spirit of Mihono Bourbon.